When my adopted dad died, I kept the $200 million inheritance hidden just to see who'd treat me right. The lawyer's words kept echoing in my head as I stared at the number on the document. $200 million. My adoptive father hadn't just loved me. He had trusted me with an empire while the family that barely acknowledged my existence was already planning how to spend money they thought was theirs. You know that moment when you realize everything you believed about your place in someone's life was completely wrong? When you discover that the person everyone else took for granted actually saw you clearer than anyone else? When you understand that love doesn't always look like what the world expects it to look like? That's exactly what this story is about. The moment you stop playing by their rules and start playing by yours. Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day wherever you are in the world. Whether you're commuting to work, relaxing at home, or just looking for a story that'll make you feel something real, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, because what I'm about to share with you is going to take you on an emotional journey you won't forget. My name is Kendra Hayes, and this is the story of how I went from being the invisible adopted daughter of a tech billionaire to the woman who owned everything his biological children desperately wanted. Picture this, me standing in that sterile conference room, watching my adoptive siblings argue over who deserved Dad's vintage car collection. Completely unaware that I already owned the cars, the company, the estate, and every single asset they were salivating over. But before I get to that beautiful moment of truth, let me take you back to where it all began. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because you're going to want to follow every twist in this story of family, betrayal, and the most satisfying justice you've ever heard. I was 26 when my world collapsed. Thomas Hayes, the only father I had ever known, the man who adopted me from foster care when I was 9 years old, had just died of a sudden heart attack. I'm talking about the kind of man who taught me chess on rainy afternoons, who stayed up with me through nightmares when I first arrived at his home, who never once made me feel like I was anything less than his daughter. He was the bridge between me and a family that never quite figured out how to accept a black girl into their perfect white American success story. His biological children, Garrett and Bethany, had never been cruel exactly, just distant, always making me feel like I was a good deed their father had done, not actually family. Comments about how lucky I was that Dad chose me. Surprised reactions when I got into Stanford, like they expected less. The way family photos always seemed to be taken when I wasn't around. Bethany especially had this way of introducing me at social events as Dad's project, with a smile that never reached her eyes. Thomas saw all of it, and he made sure I knew I belonged. He pulled me aside after family dinners and told me stories about building his company from nothing. He taught me coding when I was 12, brought me to board meetings when I was in high school, made sure I understood that his legacy was as much mine as anyone's. I believed in family back then. Real, unconditional family. I believed that the people who raised you would stand by you no matter what. I believed that love was stronger than biology, that if you proved yourself worthy, people would eventually accept you. I thought the Hayes name meant I had finally found where I belonged, that I had a forever home. I was about to learn exactly how wrong I was. The morning after the funeral, I found Garrett and Bethany in Thomas's office going through his files. Not mourning, not reminiscing, planning. "We need to talk about the company transition," Garrett said, barely glancing at me as I stood in the doorway. He was 32, always dressed like he was about to close a billion-dollar deal, even though he'd never actually closed anything. Bethany looked up from Dad's desk, where she was sorting through documents like she owned them. She was 30, perfectly styled as always, her expression a mixture of pity and dismissal. "Kendra, sweetie, this doesn't really concern you, but since you're here, we wanted to let you know that we're going to make sure you're taken care of." Taken care of. Like I was a charity case they'd inherited along with the estate. "Dad built Horizon Tech into a $3 billion company," Garrett continued, pulling out what looked like organizational charts. "Someone needs to step up and lead it properly. Someone with the right background and experience. The right background. Not the black girl. Not the adopted daughter who'd spent every summer since age 15 interning at that company. Not the person Thomas had personally trained to understand every aspect of the business." "What about Dad's will?" I asked quietly. Garrett and Bethany exchanged a look. That look. The one that said they'd already discussed this, already made their decisions about my place in their world. The will is complicated, Bethany said in that patronizing tone she'd perfected over the years. Dad was under a lot of stress before he died. The heart condition, the medication. His lawyer is reviewing everything to make sure his real wishes are honored. His real wishes. Not what he actually wanted. What they thought he should have wanted. Besides, Garrett added, leaning back in Dad's chair like he already owned it, Horizon Tech needs experienced leadership. The board will expect continuity, someone they trust. Someone they trust. Not the woman who'd coded the algorithm that saved the company $50 million last year. Not the daughter who'd spent countless nights working alongside Thomas, learning every detail of the business he'd built. That's when I understood something that made my blood run cold. Thomas's death hadn't just taken my father. It had removed the only reason this family had ever pretended to include me. The mask was about to come off completely, and I was going to see exactly who these people really were. What I didn't know yet was that Thomas had seen this moment coming years before I did. He had prepared for it in ways that would destroy everything Garrett and Bethany thought they knew about their inheritance. But first, I had to watch my entire world fall apart around me. I left them in that office and went to Thomas's bedroom. The room still smelled like him, that combination of expensive cologne and the mint tea he drank every night. This had been our space for late-night talks, where he'd share stories about his own father's disappointment in him, where we'd discuss philosophy and business and what it meant to build something that mattered. I opened his nightstand drawer, looking for something to hold on to. What I found instead changed everything. A sealed envelope with my name written in Thomas's distinctive handwriting, and underneath it a small key attached to a note. Safety Deposit Box 247, First National Bank. When they show you who they are, remember who you actually are. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. My dear Kendra, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're probably feeling more alone than you've ever felt in your life. I need you to know something that I should have told you years ago, but didn't want to burden you with while I was still here to protect you. Garrett and Bethany have never seen you as family. I've watched them for years, seen how they treat you when they think I'm not looking, heard the things they say about you behind closed doors. I know what will happen when I'm no longer here to shield you. My throat tightened. That's why I've made certain arrangements. The key will take you to documents that transfer complete ownership of Horizon Tech and all my personal assets to you. Everything. The company, the estate, the investment portfolio. Approximately $200 million in total value. I had to read that 3 times. $200 million. Not thousands. Not millions. $200 million. You are now one of the youngest female tech CEOs in the country and one of the wealthiest young women in Silicon Valley. But Kendra, I'm giving you a choice. You can reveal this inheritance immediately and watch them scramble to treat you like you matter. Or you can wait. Watch. See who shows you respect when they think you have nothing. See who your real family is. Real family. The words cut deep. Whatever you choose, know that you were never charity to me. You were never a good deed or a project. You were my daughter. The only one who ever truly understood what I was trying to build. The only one who loved me for who I was, not what I could give them. The company is yours because you earned it. The money is yours because you deserve it. The power is yours because I trust you to use it wisely. Show them who you really are, Kendra. Show them what they threw away. All my love, Dad. I sat there on Thomas's bed, holding documents worth $200 million, while downstairs Garrett and Bethany were already measuring the office for new furniture in what they thought was their company. The irony was suffocating. But then I remembered what Thomas had written. See who shows you respect when they think you have nothing. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to stay silent. I was going to let them think I was just the adopted girl with no claim to Thomas's legacy. I was going to watch every single person in this family show me exactly who they really were. And then, when I was ready, when I had seen enough, I was going to teach them a lesson about underestimating the quiet black girl they never bothered to know. What I didn't realize yet was just how ugly things were about to get. How far they were willing to go when they thought I couldn't fight back. how much their true nature would cost them when the truth finally came out. But that revelation was still coming. First, I had to survive what they were planning to do to me. And it started with a conversation that would test every ounce of strength Thomas had spent 17 years building in me. That afternoon, Garrett knocked on my bedroom door with what he probably thought was a sympathetic expression. The same room I'd had since I was 9 years old. The one Thomas had let me paint purple because it was my favorite color. "Kendra, can we talk for a minute?" I slid the envelope under my pillow and sat up. "Sure." He came in and sat on the edge of my bed, looking around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. The walls covered in my artwork from over the years. The bookshelf Thomas had built for me when I was 12. The desk where I'd learned to code. "This must be really hard for you," he said. "Losing Dad like this." I waited. There was always a but coming with Garrett. "Bethany and I have been talking, and we want to make sure you're okay. Financially, I mean." "Financially? Well, you're finishing your master's degree at Stanford, right? That's expensive. And you've been living here rent-free, which obviously can't continue indefinitely." "Can't continue. In the house Thomas specifically told me would always be my home." "We're thinking," Garrett continued, pulling out his phone like he had notes prepared, "that we could set up a small trust fund for you. Maybe $50,000 a year until you're 30. That should be enough to finish school and get you started in life. $50,000 a year. From a $3 billion company. From an estate worth hundreds of millions. That's very generous of you," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We think it's what Dad would have wanted. He always believed in helping people stand on their own 2 feet. Stand on my own 2 feet. Like I hadn't been standing on my own feet since I was 9 years old, navigating a world that looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong. "There's just one thing," Garrett said, and there it was. "We'd need you to sign some papers. Legal stuff, disclaiming any interest in the company or the estate. Just to make things clean for the lawyers. Disclaiming any interest. They wanted me to sign away everything before I even knew what I had." "I need to think about it," I said. Garrett's expression shifted slightly. "Kendra, I don't think you understand how generous this offer is. Most adopted kids don't get anything when their parents die. We're trying to take care of you here. Most adopted kids. Not most children. Most adopted kids." I said I need to think about it. He stood up, his friendly demeanor cracking just a little. "Don't take too long. The lawyers need these papers signed by next week, or things get complicated." After he left, I pulled out my phone and called the one person who had always understood what it was like to navigate spaces where you didn't quite fit. My best friend from Stanford, Jasmine. We'd met freshman year when we were the only 2 black girls in our computer science program. "Ken, I've been trying to reach you," Jasmine said as soon as she picked up. "I'm so sorry about your dad. How are you holding up?" I told her everything. About finding Garrett and Bethany in the office. About the trust fund offer. About them wanting me to sign papers. I didn't tell her about the inheritance. "Not yet. They're trying to push you out," Jasmine said, her voice sharp with anger. 3 days after the funeral, and they're already talking about money. It gets worse. Garrett said I can't live here indefinitely. "Kendra, that's your home. You've lived there for 17 years. Not anymore, apparently." Jasmine was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I need to see how far they're willing to go. Be careful, Ken. People get ugly when money's involved." She had no idea how right she was. That evening, the whole family gathered for dinner. Thomas's sister, Margaret, had flown in from Boston. She'd always been kind to me, or at least I thought she had been. We sat around the dining table where I'd eaten thousands of meals, but tonight felt different, like I was a guest at my own family dinner. "I wanted to talk to everyone about Thomas's estate," Margaret said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. "I've spoken with the estate attorney, and there are some concerns." "What kind of concerns?" I asked. Margaret looked at me with what appeared to be genuine sympathy. "Sweetheart, Thomas made some decisions in his final months that may not have been in his best interest. The heart condition, the stress of running the company. He wasn't always thinking clearly." My stomach dropped. They were going to contest whatever Thomas had wanted. "The attorney found some irregularities in recent changes to the will," Garrett added. Documents signed when Dad was heavily medicated. That was a lie. Thomas had changed his will 2 years ago, long before his heart problems started. But they didn't know I knew that. What kind of irregularities? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Bethany reached across the table like she was trying to comfort me. Kendra, honey, this isn't your fault. But there's evidence that someone may have influenced Dad during his final years. Someone who had access to him when he was vulnerable. Someone. They meant me. I would never manipulate Thomas, I said quietly. Of course you wouldn't, Margaret said quickly. Not intentionally. But you were very close to him, and sometimes people don't realize when they're exerting influence. What exactly are you accusing me of? The table went silent. No one's accusing you of anything, Garrett said, but his tone said otherwise. We're just saying that the will needs to be reviewed carefully, to make sure Dad's true wishes are honored. There was that phrase again. His true wishes. And what do you think his true wishes were? I asked. To take care of his children, Margaret said. His biological children who share his blood, his legacy. Biological children. Not me. Thomas loved Kendra, Margaret continued. But love and inheritance are different things. Blood is blood. I looked around the table at these people I'd called family for 17 years. Garrett, who'd never once asked me about my life. Bethany, who'd introduced me as the adopted one at every social function. Margaret, who'd sent Christmas cards addressed only to the Hayes family, with my name conspicuously absent. I think I've lost my appetite, I said, standing up. Kendra, don't be dramatic, Bethany called after me. We're trying to include you in these conversations. Include me. While they discussed taking away everything Thomas had wanted me to have. I went back to my room and pulled out the envelope again. Thomas's words stared back at me. See who shows you respect when they think you have nothing. I was seeing it, crystal clear. The next morning, I found Bethany going through Thomas's personal study. She had boxes spread across the floor, sorting through his books, his papers, his memories. What are you doing? I asked from the doorway. Oh, Kendra, I didn't hear you come in. She didn't look guilty, just mildly annoyed at being interrupted. I'm organizing Dad's things. We can't keep everything, and I thought I'd sort out what's valuable from what's just sentimental. Valuable versus sentimental. Like some memories mattered more than others. That's his collection of first editions, I said, watching her stack books into a box. He spent 20 years collecting those. Exactly. They're worth quite a bit. I'm having them appraised. He wanted those to stay in the family. Bethany looked up at me with that patient expression she'd perfected. Kendra, they are staying in the family. Garrett and I are family. Not me. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Look, Bethany said, standing up and brushing dust off her designer jeans. I know this is hard for you. You had a special relationship with Dad, and that's wonderful. But there are realities we need to face. What realities? You're not actually his daughter. You're a girl he felt sorry for and decided to help. That was generous of him, truly generous. But it doesn't make you entitled to his estate. There it was, the truth they'd been dancing around for days. Thomas adopted me legally, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay calm. That makes me his daughter in every way that matters. Does it though? Bethany's voice got colder. Because adoption is just paperwork, Kendra. It doesn't change biology. It doesn't change the fact that you came from nothing and we gave you everything. We, not Thomas. We. I think you should leave, I said. This is my house now. I'm not going anywhere. But you might want to start thinking about where you're going to go. That afternoon, I drove to the bank with the key Thomas had left me. My hands were shaking as I signed the papers to access the safety deposit box. Inside was exactly what Thomas had promised. Legal documents transferring complete ownership of Horizon Tech to me. Stock certificates. Property deeds. Bank account information. And a USB drive labeled for Kendra's eyes only. I went back to my car and plugged the USB drive into my laptop. It contained dozens of video files, all dated from the past 2 years. I clicked on the first one. Thomas appeared on screen, sitting in his study. He looked healthy. This was before his heart problems became serious. Kendra, if you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you're probably wondering why I did what I did. Let me explain. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. 6 months ago, Garrett came to me asking for a loan. $2 million to cover gambling debts. Did you know your brother has been gambling? I didn't either, until he showed up desperate and panicked. My stomach turned. I gave him the money on one condition: that he get help. He promised he would. That was 6 months ago. Last week, he asked for another $1 million. Thomas's expression was sad, disappointed. Bethany's no better. She's been using the company credit card for personal expenses. $50,000 last month alone. Designer clothes, spa treatments, trips with her friends. All charged to Horizon Tech. He pulled out documents and held them up to the camera. But more than the money, Kendra, what broke my heart was overhearing a conversation between them last month. They were at the house, thought I was napping. Bethany said, and I quote, "The second dad's gone. We're getting that girl out of here. She's gotten enough charity for one lifetime." My eyes filled with tears. That's when I knew I had to protect you. Not just financially, but emotionally. I wanted you to see who they really are before you decide what to do with the power I'm giving you. The video continued with more recordings. Garrett talking about selling the company the moment he inherited it. Bethany discussing which pieces of art she'd sell first. Margaret on the phone with someone, laughing about Thomas's little rescue project. Every conversation revealed the same truth. They had never seen me as family. They had tolerated me because Thomas demanded it, and they were counting the days until they could erase me from their lives completely. The final video was dated just a week before Thomas died. Kendra, by now you've seen what they're really like. I'm sorry you had to see it, but I needed you to know the truth before you decided how to handle this inheritance. Thomas leaned closer to the camera. You have 2 choices. You can reveal everything now. Watch them scramble to pretend they care about you. Or you can wait. Give them rope to hang themselves with. Let them show you exactly how cruel they're willing to be. He smiled sadly. Whatever you choose, remember this. You are my daughter. Not because of paperwork or obligation, but because I chose you and you chose me. That bond is stronger than any blood relation. His voice got softer. You're going to do great things, Kendra. With or without this money. But I want you to have it because you earned it. You spent 17 years being my daughter, my friend, my colleague. You loved me when I was difficult. You challenged me when I was wrong. You made me a better person. Tears were streaming down my face now. Show them who you are, sweetheart. Show them what they threw away. And then build something beautiful with what I've given you. The video ended. I sat in that parking lot for an hour, watching the recordings over and over. Thomas had known. He'd seen everything, and he'd prepared me for this exact moment. That night, I made my final decision. I was going to let Garrett and Bethany think they'd won. I was going to let them push me out, dismiss me, treat me like the charity case they'd always believed I was. I was going to watch them reveal every ugly thought, every racist assumption, every cruel intention. And then, when they'd shown me everything, when they'd proven beyond any doubt who they really were, I was going to take back what was mine and teach them a lesson about underestimating the girl they never bothered to love. But what I didn't know yet was just how low they were willing to go. How much damage they were willing to do to someone they thought couldn't fight back. The real betrayal was just beginning, and it was going to come from a place I never expected. The catastrophe came exactly 1 week after Thomas's funeral, wrapped in legal paperwork and delivered with a smile. I was in my room packing some of my things, preparing for what I knew was coming, when Bethany knocked on my door. She had someone with her, a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. Kendra, this is Preston Walsh, the family's attorney. He needs to speak with you about some documents. Preston Walsh looked like every corporate lawyer I'd ever seen. Mid-50s, silver hair, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He sat down on my desk chair without being invited, spreading papers across my desk like he owned the space. Miss Hayes, I've been retained by the family to handle Thomas Hayes's estate. There are some urgent matters we need to address. What kind of matters? He pulled out a thick stack of documents. Your living situation, primarily. This house is part of the estate, and the estate needs to be settled. The family has graciously offered to allow you to remain here for 30 days while you find alternative housing. 30 days. to leave the only home I'd known for 17 years. And if I don't agree to that timeline? Preston's smile got thinner. Then we'd be forced to pursue a formal eviction, which would be unfortunate for everyone involved. The family is trying to be generous here. Generous. They were kicking me out of my own house and calling it generous. There's also the matter of your education, he continued, pulling out more papers. Stanford is quite expensive. The family is willing to continue supporting your tuition for this semester only, provided you sign these documents. I looked at the papers he'd spread out. They were release forms, disclaimers of any interest in the estate, acknowledgments that I had no legal claim to Thomas's assets. These papers say I'm giving up any inheritance rights. Correct. In exchange for the family's continued financial support during your transition period. What if Thomas left me something in his will? Preston and Bethany exchanged a quick glance. Too quick, but I caught it. Miss Hayes, I've reviewed Thomas's will thoroughly. While he had great affection for you, the bulk of his estate goes to his biological children, as is customary. There may be some small personal items set aside for you, but nothing that would affect these documents. He was lying. I could see it in the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. I need time to think about this, I said. Unfortunately, time is something we don't have. Preston pushed the papers closer to me. The estate is in probate. These documents need to be filed this week, or the situation becomes much more complicated. Kendra, Bethany said, her voice dripping with fake concern, we're trying to help you here. Dad would want you to be taken care of, but you need to be realistic about your position. My position? The adopted black girl with no claim to the white family's fortune. What happens if I don't sign? Preston's expression hardened. Then the family would be forced to contest any claims you might make on the estate. That would mean lawyers, court appearances, public scrutiny. It would also mean an immediate halt to all financial support, including your housing here and your tuition payments. It was a threat. Sign away everything or we'll destroy you. The choice is yours, Bethany said, standing up. But I'd advise you to think carefully about what you're giving up by being stubborn. After they left, I sat staring at those papers for a long time. This was it, the moment Thomas had warned me about. They were trying to force me out before I could discover what was rightfully mine. I pulled out my phone and called the number on the card Thomas had left with the safety deposit box key. Robert Kimball, attorney at law. Miss Hayes, he answered on the second ring. I've been expecting your call. You know about the inheritance? I drafted your father's will personally. I know everything. Relief flooded through me. The family has their own lawyer. He's trying to get me to sign papers giving up any inheritance rights. Don't sign anything, Robert said sharply. Preston Walsh is a competent attorney, but he's been misled about the contents of the will. The family believes they're inheriting everything. They have no idea what Thomas actually did. When were you planning to tell them? The formal reading of the will is scheduled for next week. That's when everything becomes official. But Miss Hayes, I need to ask you something. Do you want to reveal the inheritance now, or do you want to wait? I thought about Thomas's videos, about his words. Let them show you exactly how cruel they're willing to be. I want to wait. I want to see how far they'll go. Robert was quiet for a moment. That's a dangerous game. They're not going to make this easy for you. I know, but I need to see who they really are. Then I'll delay the formal reading for as long as legally possible. But Kendra, the moment you feel unsafe, the moment this becomes too much, you call me immediately. Understood. Understood. That night, I packed a single suitcase with my most important belongings. The photo album Thomas had made for me of our years together. The first program I'd ever written, which he'd framed. The necklace he'd given me for my college graduation. Everything else I would leave behind, because I knew what was coming. They were going to evict me. They were going to cut me off. They were going to try to break me down until I was desperate enough to accept whatever scraps they offered. But I had $200 million waiting for me. I had Thomas's company. I had everything they thought was theirs. I just had to survive long enough to claim it. The next morning, Garrett was waiting for me at the breakfast table. He had papers spread out in front of him, looking every inch the businessman he pretended to be. Kendra, sit down. We need to talk. I poured myself coffee and sat across from him, waiting. I spoke with Preston Walsh yesterday. He said you refused to sign the settlement papers. I told him I needed time to think. There's nothing to think about, Garrett said, his voice getting harder. This is a generous offer. More generous than you deserve, frankly. More generous than I deserve? You lived in this house rent-free for 17 years. You went to the best schools. You had every advantage. Dad spent probably $2 million on you over the years. That's already your inheritance. $2 million. Out of a $200 million estate. And he was acting like it was too much. Thomas wanted me to have more than that, I said quietly. Garrett laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. Thomas felt sorry for you. That's different from wanting you to inherit his life's work. You don't know what Thomas wanted. I know he was my father. My blood. Not yours. He leaned forward. You need to understand something, Kendra. You're not part of this family. You never were. You were a pet project that Dad took too far. A pet project. 17 years of my life reduced to a pet project. Dad loved me, I said, my voice shaking. Dad felt obligated to you. There's a difference. Garrett stood up, gathering his papers. You have until Friday to sign those documents. After that, we're moving forward with eviction proceedings. 3 days. I had 3 days before they threw me out of my home. I spent those 3 days watching them transform the house. Bethany brought in an interior designer to redecorate Thomas's bedroom. Garrett set up a home office in what had been Thomas's study, boxing up all his personal items like they were garbage. Margaret claimed the guest house for her visits, already planning how she'd spend her summers there. They were erasing Thomas from his own home, and they were erasing me right along with him. On Thursday night, I was packing the last of my things when I heard voices downstairs. Garrett and Bethany were in the living room with several other people. I crept halfway down the stairs to listen. The girl is being unreasonable, Garrett was saying. We've offered her a generous settlement, but she keeps stalling. Maybe she knows something, a woman's voice said. I didn't recognize her. She doesn't know anything, Bethany said dismissively. She's just being stubborn. Thinks Dad left her more than he did. Did he, though? The same woman asked. Leave her anything? There was a pause. I held my breath. Preston reviewed the will, Garrett said. There's some jewelry mentioned. A few personal items. Nothing significant. Another lie. But they believed it. The problem, Bethany said, is that she's making this difficult. The longer she stays here, the longer the estate stays in limbo. We can't sell anything or make any decisions until she's gone and the probate is closed. So make her leave, a man's voice said. Cut her off completely. No money, no support, no safety net. She'll come crawling back to sign whatever you want within a week. That's the plan, Garrett said. Tomorrow we're changing the locks. She can come back for her things with a police escort, but she's not staying here another night. Changing the locks. They were locking me out of my own house. I went back to my room and called Jasmine. Can I stay with you for a while? I asked when she answered. Of course. What happened? They're kicking me out tomorrow. Changing the locks. Kendra, that's insane. Can't you fight this? Not yet. I need to let this play out. Let it play out. They're making you homeless. I know, but I have to see how far they'll go. Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. You're scaring me, Ken. This doesn't sound like you. I'm not the same person I was 2 weeks ago, I said quietly. Thomas made sure of that. The next morning, I was loading the last box into my car when Garrett appeared with 2 security guards I'd never seen before. Kendra Hayes, one of them said, you need to vacate the premises immediately. I'm leaving, I said, closing my trunk. We'll need your house key, Garrett said, holding out his hand. I pulled the key off my keychain and dropped it into his palm. The key to the house that was legally mine. The house they thought they were taking from me. You're making a mistake, Garrett said as I got into my car. We would have taken care of you. But you had to be difficult. I looked at him through my car window. At this man who'd shared a house with me for 17 years, but had never once asked me about my dreams, my fears, my life. Who looked at me and saw nothing but an inconvenience to be dealt with. We'll see who made the mistake, I said quietly. As I drove away, I watched the house disappear in my rearview mirror. The house where Thomas had taught me chess. where I'd learned to code, where I'd become who I was. They thought they were taking it from me. They had no idea I was about to take everything from them. I drove to Jasmine's apartment in Oakland, a tiny one-bedroom she shared with her girlfriend, Maya. They'd cleared out a space in the living room for me, an air mattress and a corner for my boxes. "It's not much," Jasmine said apologetically. "It's perfect," I said, and I meant it, because this was real. This was people who cared about me because of who I was, not what I could give them. That night, I lay on that air mattress and pulled out my phone. I had emails from Stanford about unpaid tuition, messages from Garrett's assistant about picking up my remaining belongings with a police escort, a text from Bethany saying they donated all my old clothes to charity. They were systematically erasing me from their lives, destroying every trace of the 17 years I'd spent as part of their family. But what they didn't know was that every cruel action, every dismissive word, every moment of erasure was building my case. When the truth came out, when they discovered what they'd really lost, there would be no excuse. No claim that they'd treated me fairly. No argument that they'd shown me love. They were writing my vindication with their own cruelty. And I was going to make sure everyone saw exactly what they'd written. But first, I had to survive what came next. Because losing my home was just the beginning. They were about to take everything else they thought I valued, piece by piece, until I was completely broken. What they didn't understand was that Thomas had already given me the only thing I needed. Not the money, not the company, but the truth about who they really were. And the truth was about to set me free. The pressure started small, almost invisible at first. Then it became impossible to ignore. 2 days after moving into Jasmine's apartment, I received an email from Stanford's financial office. My tuition payment had been reversed. My account was now $45,000 in arrears, and if it wasn't paid within 2 weeks, I'd be withdrawn from my classes. I called the number listed in the email. "Yes, Miss Hayes," the administrator said, pulling up my account. "The payment that was made in September has been reversed by the account holder, a Mr. Garrett Hayes. That was supposed to cover my entire semester. I understand, but the reversal came with a note that the family trust would no longer be covering your educational expenses. You'll need to make alternative arrangements. Alternative arrangements. With no money, no home, and no family support." I hung up and stared at my laptop screen. 2 weeks to come up with $45,000 or lose everything I'd been working toward for the past 4 years. My master's degree in computer science, the program Thomas had been so proud of me for getting into, was about to disappear. I could have called Robert Kimball right then, could have revealed the inheritance and paid the tuition 10 times over. But Thomas's words kept echoing in my head. Let them show you who they are. So I did what millions of students do. I applied for emergency student loans. The interest rates were terrible. The repayment terms were worse, but I had no choice. Within a week, I'd borrowed enough to cover my tuition, going into debt to pay for an education that was technically already paid for from my own inheritance. The irony wasn't lost on me. But the tuition was just the beginning. The next attack came through social media. I was in class when my phone started buzzing nonstop with notifications. Someone had created a Facebook post that was spreading through our social circles like wildfire. It was Bethany's post, public for everyone to see. Heartbroken to share that despite our family's years of generosity and love, Thomas's adopted daughter has chosen to reject our support and pursue legal claims against his estate. We provided her with everything, the best education, a beautiful home, unconditional love, and this is how she repays his memory. Sometimes the people you help the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. The comments section was already filling up with reactions. Friends of the family, people I'd known for years, all expressing shock and disappointment at my alleged greed. Can't believe she'd do this to them after everything they did for her. This is why you have to be careful about who you help. Gold digger. She was always waiting for a payday. My phone rang. It was one of Thomas's business associates, a woman named Carol who'd always been kind to me at company events. "Kendra, dear, I just saw Bethany's post. I had no idea you were making claims on Thomas's estate." "I'm not making any claims, Carol. I'm just refusing to sign away my rights before I even know what Thomas wanted." But Bethany said you're demanding money from the family, that you've hired lawyers to go after them. That's not true. I haven't hired anyone or demanded anything. Carol was quiet for a moment. Sweetheart, I don't want to tell you what to do, but this is making you look very bad. The family has a lot of friends in this city. You might want to reconsider whatever you're doing. After she hung up, I sat in my car in the Stanford parking lot and watched the comments multiply. Every person who commented was someone I'd known, someone I'd smiled at during company dinners, someone who'd never questioned why the only black daughter in the Hayes family was being called greedy for wanting to know what her father had left her. Jasmine found me there an hour later. I saw the post, she said, sliding into the passenger seat. It's all over my feed too. She's turning everyone against me. Let her. The truth will come out eventually. Will it though? Or will everyone just remember this version of the story? Jasmine grabbed my hand. Ken, these people don't matter. You know who you are. Thomas knew who you were. That's enough. But it didn't feel like enough. It felt like drowning. The social media campaign was strategic and relentless. Over the next week, Garrett posted about how difficult it was to grieve his father while dealing with legal complications. Margaret shared old photos of Thomas with his biological children, captions about blood family and true legacy. Even distant relatives I barely knew were posting about the importance of honoring biological connections. The subtext was clear. The adopted black girl was trying to steal from the real family. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. You should be ashamed of yourself. Thomas gave you everything, and you're spitting on his grave. You don't deserve a penny of his money. Then another, and another. By evening, I'd received over 30 messages from strangers who'd seen Bethany's post, all of them telling me I was ungrateful, greedy, and didn't deserve the generosity Thomas had shown me. I blocked the numbers, but they kept coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on Jasmine's air mattress, listening to the sounds of Oakland through the thin walls, and wondered if Thomas had known it would be this hard. If he'd understood how isolated I would feel, how much it would hurt to watch people I'd known for years turn against me based on lies. The next morning brought a new development. I was called into a meeting with my academic advisor at Stanford. Professor Andrews was a woman I'd worked with for 3 years. She'd supervised my research projects, written recommendation letters, been a mentor and advocate. But today, her expression was cold. Kendra, I've received some concerning information about your situation. What kind of information? The Hayes family's attorney contacted the university. He expressed concerns about how you obtained admission to Stanford originally. My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? He suggested that Thomas may have made significant donations to the university contingent on your acceptance. Donations that may have influenced the admissions process. That's insane. I earned my place here. My test scores, my grades, everything was legitimate. Professor Andrews pulled out a file. I've reviewed your application materials. Your academic credentials are impressive. But there's no denying that Thomas Hayes donated $500,000 to the computer science department the same year you were admitted. I didn't know about that donation. Perhaps not, but it creates an appearance of impropriety. The department chair wants to review your entire academic record to ensure all your work has been your own. I stared at her. You're questioning whether I earned my degrees? We're questioning whether you received special treatment due to your connection to a major donor. This was Garrett's work. I could see his fingerprints all over it. He was trying to destroy not just my future, but my past. Trying to make it seem like everything I'd accomplished was only because of Thomas's money. I've earned every grade, every credit, every achievement on my own merit, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Then the review will confirm that. In the meantime, your research assistant position is suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. My research assistant position. The job that paid for my groceries and helped cover rent. Gone. I walked out of that office in a daze. They weren't just trying to take my inheritance. They were trying to take my credibility, my reputation, my sense of self-worth. I called Robert Kimball from the parking lot. They're destroying me, I said, my voice breaking. They're making it look like everything I've ever accomplished was because of Thomas's money. Kendra, I know this is difficult, but you need to hold on just a little longer. The will reading is scheduled for next week. Once that happens, everything changes. What if there's nothing left of me by then? What if they've destroyed my reputation so completely that no one believes the truth? Then you rebuild, Robert said firmly. With $200 million and Thomas's company behind you, you can rebuild anything. But you have to survive this first. Survive. That's what this had become. A test of survival. That evening, I went back to Jasmine's apartment to find Maya waiting with bad news of her own. Ken, I'm really sorry about this, but my landlord is raising our rent. Significantly. We can barely afford it as it is, and with 3 people in a 1-bedroom. She didn't have to finish. I understood. How long do I have? End of the month. I'm so sorry. I wish we could help more. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live with no income, no savings, and a reputation in tatters. I spent that night on Craigslist, looking at apartments I couldn't afford. Studio apartments in bad neighborhoods still wanted first month, last month, and a security deposit. That was 3 months' rent I didn't have. My phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. But this one was different. Miss Hayes, my name is Trevor Grant. I'm a journalist with the San Francisco Chronicle. I'd like to speak with you about the Hayes estate situation. I think there's more to this story than what's being reported. I stared at that message for a long time. A journalist. Someone who might actually want to hear my side of the story. Or someone who would twist my words and make everything worse. I didn't respond. The next day, I had a shift at the campus library, a work-study job I'd picked up to replace the lost research position. I was shelving books when I overheard 2 students talking in the next aisle. Did you hear about that girl who's trying to sue her adoptive family? The Hayes situation? Yeah, my mom knows them. She said the girl was always trouble, always trying to get attention. I heard she was stealing from the dad before he died. I stood frozen, holding a copy of Pride and Prejudice, listening to strangers repeat lies about me as if they were facts. This was what Garrett and Bethany had created. A narrative so compelling, so easy to believe, that people who'd never met me were convinced I was a thief and a manipulator. When my shift ended, I found Garrett waiting outside the library. Kendra, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then just listen. He fell into step beside me as I walked toward the parking lot. This doesn't have to be ugly. You're making it ugly by refusing to cooperate. I'm not refusing to cooperate. I'm refusing to sign away my rights before I know what Thomas wanted. Thomas wanted his real children to inherit his legacy. You know that. Deep down, you know that. I stopped walking and turned to face him. If you're so sure about what Thomas wanted, why are you so desperate to get me to sign those papers? Garrett's expression flickered. Just for a second, but I caught it. Uncertainty. Fear. We're trying to be fair, he said. But you're making that impossible. The lawyers are getting expensive. The estate is losing value every day this drags on. You're hurting everyone by being stubborn. Or maybe I'm protecting what Thomas wanted me to have. Thomas wanted you to have a good life. He didn't want you to destroy his family fighting over money. I'm not destroying the family, Garrett. I'm just refusing to disappear quietly. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You need to understand something. We have resources you don't have. Lawyers, connections, friends in high places. We can make your life very difficult. You already have. This is nothing. His smile was cold. If you don't sign those papers by the end of the week, we're going to show you what difficult really looks like. He walked away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with my heart racing. That night, I finally responded to the journalist's text. I'll meet with you, but off the record until I'm ready to talk publicly. Trevor Grant responded immediately. Thank you. I think you'll want to hear what I've found. We met at a coffee shop in Berkeley the next afternoon. Trevor was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a notebook that looked well used. Thank you for meeting me, he said. I've been following the Hayes estate situation, and something doesn't add up. What doesn't add up? The family's story. They claim Thomas left everything to his biological children, but I pulled public records. Thomas updated his will 6 times in the last 5 years. Each time, he used the same attorney, Robert Kimball. And each time, there was a significant change. My heart started racing. What kind of changes? That's what I can't access without a court order. But what I can tell you is that Thomas Hayes was very deliberate about his estate planning. He met with Kimball quarterly. These weren't spur-of-the-moment decisions made on medication or under duress. The family claims he wasn't thinking clearly toward the end. Trevor pulled out his laptop. I interviewed 3 of Thomas's business partners. All of them say he was sharp right up until his death, making big decisions, closing deals, planning for the company's future. He turned the laptop toward me. I also found this. It was a video from a tech conference 6 months before Thomas died. Thomas on stage, giving the keynote speech. He looked healthy, vibrant, completely in control. Does this look like someone who wasn't thinking clearly? Trevor asked. I watched Thomas on that screen, gesturing enthusiastically as he talked about the future of technology, and I felt tears welling up. The family's narrative doesn't hold up, Trevor continued, which makes me think they're lying about what's in the will. And if they're lying about that, what else are they lying about? I looked at this journalist who'd spent his own time digging into the truth, and I made a decision. What if I told you Thomas left me everything? Trevor's eyes widened. Everything. The company, the estate, all of it. $200 million. He sat back, processing. And you've kept that quiet because Thomas wanted me to see who they really were. He wanted me to watch them reveal their true nature when they thought I was powerless. Trevor started writing. That's one hell of a story. It's not ready to be told yet. But when it is, will you tell it accurately? He met my eyes. I'll tell it truthfully. I can't promise more than that. That's all I need. As I drove back to Jasmine's apartment, I felt something shift inside me. The pressure was building, the attacks were getting worse, but I wasn't alone anymore. Thomas had left me evidence. Robert Kimball was protecting my interests. And now I had a journalist who was willing to dig for the truth. The family thought they were tightening the noose. What they didn't realize was that I was documenting every attack, saving every cruel message, recording every lie. They were building my case for me, one betrayal at a time. But the worst was yet to come, because what I was about to discover would test everything I thought I knew about the people I'd called family. And it would force me to decide just how ruthless I was willing to be in return. The devastation came on a Wednesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after Thomas died. I was at the campus library when Robert Kimball called, his voice tight with urgency. Kendra, we have a serious problem. The family has filed an emergency motion to freeze all estate assets, pending a competency hearing. My blood ran cold. A competency hearing? They're claiming Thomas wasn't of sound mind when he made his final will. They've submitted medical records, testimony from doctors, even a psychiatric evaluation suggesting he was suffering from depression and diminished capacity. That's impossible. Thomas was fine. I was with him every day. I know, but they've built a compelling case on paper. The judge granted a temporary freeze on all assets until a hearing can be scheduled. When is the hearing? 6 weeks from now. Maybe longer. 6 weeks. 6 more weeks of being broke, homeless, watching them destroy everything Thomas had built while I couldn't do anything to stop them. There's more, Robert said, and his tone made my stomach drop. They're calling you as a witness. They want you to testify about Thomas's mental state in his final months. They want me to say he wasn't thinking clearly. Exactly. And if you refuse, they'll paint you as uncooperative. If you testify truthfully, they'll use it against you. They've put you in an impossible position. After hanging up, I sat in the empty library and tried to process what was happening. The family had just locked away my inheritance for at least 6 more weeks, probably longer. And they were going to force me to either lie about Thomas's mental state or watch them use my words to contest his will. I needed air. I walked outside and found myself heading toward the one place that had always brought me peace, the computer science building where Thomas used to pick me up after my classes. We'd walk through campus together, talking about code and business and life, and for those moments, I'd felt like I belonged somewhere. I was sitting on the steps, lost in memory, when someone sat down beside me. Kendra Hayes. I looked up to find a woman in her 50s, well-dressed, with kind eyes and an expensive handbag. I'm sorry, do I know you? My name is Diane Foster. I was a close friend of your father's. I heard about what's happening with the estate, and I wanted to reach out. Another one of Thomas's friends, probably here to tell me I should sign the papers and move on. If you're here to convince me to give up, you're wasting your time. I'm not. Diane pulled out her phone. I'm here to tell you that Thomas knew exactly what he was doing, and I have proof. She showed me a series of text messages between her and Thomas, dated from his final year. Diane, I'm updating my will again. Garrett and Bethany think they're getting everything. They're going to be very surprised. Are you sure about this, Tom? They're going to fight it. I'm counting on it. I want Kendra to see who they really are before she decides what to do with the power I'm giving her. My eyes filled with tears reading his words. Thomas talked about you constantly, Diane said. About how brilliant you were, how proud he was of you. He knew his biological children would contest the will. He was prepared for it. Then why didn't he warn me? Why let me walk into this blind? Because he wanted you to make your own choice about how to handle it. He didn't want to force you into a fight you weren't ready for. Diane squeezed my hand. But he also left insurance. Documents, recordings, proof that he was of sound mind. You're not alone in this. It feels like I am. I know, but there are more of us than you think. People who love Thomas and who see what his children are really like. She stood up. When the time comes, when you're ready to fight back, call me. I'll testify about Thomas's mental state. I'll tell the truth about what he wanted. She handed me her business card and walked away, leaving me sitting on those steps with the first real hope I'd felt in days. But that hope was about to be shattered completely. I got back to Jasmine's apartment that evening to find her packing boxes. What's going on? Ken, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you this. She couldn't meet my eyes. Maya and I are moving. We found a place in the city that we can actually afford, but it's a tiny studio. There's no room for a third person. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. When? End of the week. I'm so sorry. I tried to give you more notice, but the lease came up suddenly. End of the week. 3 days to find somewhere to live with no income and no savings. I can help you look for places, Jasmine offered. Maybe find a room to rent somewhere. But we both knew the truth. Without income, without references, without anything to offer, no one was going to rent to me. That night, I lay on the air mattress for what I knew would be one of the last times and stared at the ceiling. In 3 days, I would be homeless. Actually homeless. Sleeping in my car or in shelters or on the streets. This was what Garrett had meant when he said I didn't understand what difficult looked like. The next morning, I was checking my email when I saw a message that made my heart stop. It was from Stanford's Office of Student Conduct. Dear Miss Hayes, following our investigation into your academic record, we have found evidence of potential honor code violations. You are hereby summoned to a disciplinary hearing on Friday to address these allegations. Failure to appear will result in immediate expulsion. Honor code violations. They were accusing me of cheating. I called the number listed in the email, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. This is about the Hayes investigation, the administrator said when I identified myself. We've received documentation suggesting that several of your major papers and projects may have been completed with unauthorized assistance. What kind of documentation? Anonymous submissions with detailed allegations and supporting evidence. Timestamps, communication logs, things that suggest you had help that you didn't disclose. Garrett. This had Garrett written all over it. This is fabricated. All of my work has been my own. That's what the hearing is for. You'll have a chance to defend yourself. I hung up and immediately called Robert Kimball. They're trying to destroy my academic career, I said, my voice breaking. They're accusing me of cheating to get my degree. Can you prove the accusations are false? I can prove my work is original. But Robert, if Stanford expels me, it doesn't matter what I inherit. My reputation will be destroyed. No one in tech will hire me. Everything Thomas worked to build for me will be gone. Then we need to move faster. I'm going to request an emergency hearing on the will. We need to get this information public before they destroy you completely. But even as he said it, I knew it was too late. The damage was already done. That afternoon, I received an email from Carol, Thomas's business associate, who'd called me about Bethany's Facebook post. Kendra, I wanted to reach out personally to let you know that the Horizon Tech Board has decided to issue a statement distancing the company from the current legal issues. We want to make it clear that you have no association with or claim to the company, and that any suggestions otherwise are false. They were erasing me from Thomas's company, the company I'd worked at every summer, the company where I'd written code that was still being used, the company that was legally mine. I was being systematically removed from every part of Thomas's life. From the house, from the family, from the company, from my education. They were trying to make it like I'd never existed at all. That evening, I was walking back from the library when a car pulled up beside me. It was Bethany alone, her window rolling down. "Get in. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then just listen." Her voice was sharp. "Get in the car, Kendra." Against my better judgment, I got in. She drove to a quiet park and turned off the engine. "I want you to understand something," she said, staring straight ahead. "This isn't personal. It's business. Destroying my life isn't personal. You're destroying your own life by being stubborn. We offered you a way out, a generous way out. You refused. Because Thomas left me that company. He left me everything." Bethany finally turned to look at me. "Did he though? Or did you convince him to leave you everything while he was sick and vulnerable?" "I never convinced Thomas of anything. That's not what it looks like. That's not what it will look like in court." She pulled out her phone. "We have witnesses who will testify that you isolated Dad in his final months, that you controlled his access to family, that you manipulated him into changing his will. Those are lies." "Are they?" "Because I have phone records showing you blocked my calls to Dad's cell phone. I have emails you sent on his behalf, canceling family dinners and visits. I have testimony from his nurse saying you were always there, always in his ear." My stomach turned. "I blocked your calls because he asked me to. He canceled dinners because he was too tired. I was there because he wanted me there. That's not how it will look to a jury. It will look like a young woman with no money and no prospects saw an opportunity and took it." She leaned closer. "You're a black girl with no family trying to steal from a white family. How do you think that plays in court?" There it was. The racism that had always been lurking beneath the surface, finally said out loud. "Thomas loved me," I said quietly. "Thomas felt sorry for you. And you exploited that pity." Bethany started the car again. "You have until Friday to sign the settlement papers. After that, we release everything we have. The investigation results from Stanford. The testimony about your manipulation. The evidence of your exploitation. We will destroy you so completely that no one will ever believe you deserved anything from Thomas." She drove me back to Jasmine's building and let me out without another word. I stood on the sidewalk, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. They weren't just fighting for the inheritance. They were fighting to erase me from history. To make sure that when people remembered Thomas Hayes, they remembered a generous man who was taken advantage of by an ungrateful adopted daughter. I went inside and found Jasmine and Maya on the couch, looking at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. "Ken, we need to talk," Jasmine said. "Not them too. Please not them too." "Garrett called me today," Jasmine said slowly. "He told me some things about you and Thomas. About the will and what you're claiming. Whatever he told you is a lie. He said Thomas left you everything. Is that true?" I looked at my best friend, the person who'd stood by me through everything, and saw doubt in her eyes. "Yes, it's true. And you didn't tell me?" Jasmine's voice rose. "You've been living here, letting us support you, letting us worry about you, and you've been sitting on a $200 million inheritance this whole time. It's frozen. I can't access any of it. But you knew about it. You've known this entire time." She stood up, pacing. "Garrett said you were testing people, watching to see how we'd treat you when you pretended to be poor. Is that true?" The words Thomas had written in his letter came back to me. "See who shows you kindness when they think you have nothing." I needed to know who really cared about me, I said quietly. "So we were an experiment." Maya stood up too, her voice sharp. "We opened our home to you, gave you our space, our food, our support, and you were just watching us? Judging us? That's not what I was doing." "Then what were you doing, Kendra?" Jasmine's eyes were filled with hurt. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you used us. You let us think you had nothing while you were secretly worth more than we'll ever see in our lifetimes. I couldn't tell you. Not until I knew. Until you knew what? That we were good enough people? That we passed your little test? Jasmine grabbed her keys. I need some air. Maya and I need to talk. About whether we're comfortable having someone in our home who's been lying to us for weeks. They left, and I stood alone in that apartment, surrounded by my boxes, with nowhere to go and no one left to trust. The family had taken my home, my money, my education, and my reputation. Now they'd taken my best friend. I sank down onto the air mattress and finally let myself break completely. Great, sobbing gasps that shook my whole body. Because I understood now what Thomas had been trying to show me. That this kind of wealth, this kind of power, isolated you. That once money entered the equation, nothing was simple anymore. That the truth became whatever story people chose to believe. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is your last warning. Sign the papers by Friday or we release everything. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every reason you don't deserve a single dollar. We will bury you. It was Garrett's area code. I looked at that message for a long time. Then I did something I should have done weeks ago. I called Robert Kimball. I'm done waiting, I said when he answered. I want to go public with everything. I want the will readings scheduled immediately. I want every recording, every document, every piece of evidence Thomas left. I'm ready to fight. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. I thought about Thomas's words. Show them who you are. Show them what they threw away. I'm sure. It's time for them to learn exactly what they've done. Then let's prepare for war. Because that's what this is going to be. I hung up and looked around that empty apartment. They thought they'd broken me. They thought they'd pushed me far enough that I'd crumble and disappear. What they didn't understand was that every attack had made me stronger. Every lie had sharpened my resolve. Every betrayal had shown me exactly who I was fighting and why. Thomas had left me an empire. But more than that, he'd left me the truth. And the truth was about to set me free and destroy them completely. But first, I had to survive 3 more days. 3 days until the Friday deadline. 3 days until they released their evidence and tried to destroy me publicly. 3 days until I showed them what real power looked like. The war was about to begin, and I was finally ready to fight. The Friday deadline arrived like a death sentence. I woke up on the air mattress in Jasmine's apartment. But Jasmine and Maya had spent the night at Maya's parents' house. They'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Ken, we need more time to process everything. Please be out by Sunday. We're sorry. Sunday. 2 days to find somewhere to live. I packed my belongings into garbage bags, my hands moving mechanically while my mind was somewhere else entirely. Everything I owned fit into 4 bags and 2 boxes. 17 years of life condensed into what I could carry. My phone buzzed. Robert Kimball. Kendra, I've scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday morning. We're going to present Thomas's recordings and documentation to the judge. But I need you to be prepared for what happens today. The family's releasing their evidence. Yes, and it's going to be bad. They've coordinated with multiple media outlets. This is going to be everywhere. He was right. By noon, the first article appeared. San Francisco Chronicle, but not written by Trevor Grant. This was a hit piece, carefully crafted by someone the family had paid or influenced. Tech billionaire's adopted daughter accused of elder manipulation. The article laid out the family's entire narrative. How I'd isolated Thomas from his biological children. How I'd controlled his medication and access to visitors. How I'd manipulated a dying man into changing his will to benefit me. How Stanford was investigating my academic record for fraud. But the worst part was the quotes. Thomas was a generous man who wanted to help a child in need, Garrett was quoted as saying. But Kendra took advantage of his kindness in ways we never imagined. We have evidence that she systematically isolated him from his family and convinced him to disinherit his biological children in her favor. Bethany's quote was even more damaging. It breaks my heart to say this, but we believe Kendra saw my father as a meal ticket from the day she was adopted. She's been planning this for years. The article included photos. Thomas with his biological children at company events, all of them looking like the perfect family. And then one photo of me, pulled from my LinkedIn profile, looking serious and unsmiling. The caption read, Kendra Hayes, who stands to inherit an estimated $200 million if the contested will is upheld. The comments section was already filling up. This is disgusting. She should be in jail. Classic case of adoption gone wrong. Some people can't be helped. I hope the family fights this. She doesn't deserve a penny. And worse, much worse. Of course it's a black girl trying to steal from a white family. Typical. DI hire trying to get the ultimate diversity payday. She should be grateful they took her in at all. Now she wants everything. The racism was explicit, vicious, and spreading like wildfire. My phone started ringing. News outlets wanting comments. Former classmates asking if the stories were true. Even people I didn't know, calling just to tell me what they thought of me. I turned off my phone and sat in that empty apartment, surrounded by my garbage bags, and watched my entire life collapse in real time. But the articles were just the beginning. By afternoon, Garrett had posted on LinkedIn, his professional network seeing his carefully worded statement about protecting his father's legacy from those who would exploit his generosity for personal gain. By evening, Margaret had done a video interview with a local news station, tears streaming down her face as she talked about how Thomas had been taken advantage of by someone he trusted. By nightfall, my email inbox was flooded with messages from Stanford classmates, former colleagues from Horizon Tech, and complete strangers, all of them telling me I was a thief, a manipulator, a fraud. I opened my laptop one more time and saw that Bethany had posted the most devastating thing of all, a video of Thomas from 5 years ago, before he got sick, talking at a family dinner. I adopted Kendra because I wanted to give a child a better life, he was saying in the video. But I never expected her to replace my biological children. Blood is important. Legacy is important. I want to make sure my children, Garrett and Bethany, understand that they will always be my priority. The video had been edited, I could tell, cut off mid-sentence. But to anyone watching, it looked like Thomas clearly stating that his biological children were his priority, not me. The video had been viewed 50,000 times in 3 hours. I closed my laptop and sat in the darkness, trying to remember how to breathe. They had won. They had destroyed me so completely that even when the truth came out, no one would believe it. I would always be the adopted black girl who tried to steal from her white family. My phone buzzed with one final notification before the battery died. A text from Jasmine. I saw the articles. I don't know what to believe anymore. I'm sorry, Ken. I really am. But I think it's better if we don't talk for a while. I'd lost everything. My home, my money, my education, my reputation, and now my best friend. I was completely alone. Saturday morning, I loaded my car with everything I owned and drove away from Jasmine's apartment. I had nowhere to go, no one to call, and less than $100 to my name. I drove to a Walmart parking lot and sat there, trying to figure out what to do next. Around me, other people were sleeping in their cars. A whole invisible community of people with nowhere else to go. I was one of them now. I tried to sleep in my car that night, but every sound made me jump. Every pair of headlights made me think someone had found me. By dawn, I was exhausted, terrified, and starting to understand why people gave up. Sunday morning, I drove to the one place I thought might bring me peace. The cemetery where Thomas was buried. His grave was simple, elegant. Thomas Hayes, beloved father and visionary. The date of his birth and death. Nothing about what he'd really been. Nothing about the man who'd changed my life. I sat on the grass beside his headstone and finally said out loud what I'd been holding in for weeks. I don't know if I can do this, Dad. They're too strong. They have too much power. And I'm so tired. The wind rustled through the trees, but there was no answer. No sign. Nothing but the silence of a man who was gone and couldn't help me anymore. I wanted to make you proud. I wanted to show them who I really was. But what if they're right? What if I don't deserve what you left me? I pulled out the letter Thomas had written, the one I'd been carrying with me since the day I found it. His handwriting was already starting to fade, worn from being handled so many times. Show them who you are, Kendra. Show them what they threw away. I don't know who I am anymore, I whispered. My phone, now charged from my car, buzzed. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't listen to it, but something made me press play. Miss Hayes, This is Amanda Chen from Women in Tech Foundation. I read the articles about you, and I want you to know I don't believe a word of it. I worked with Thomas Hayes for 15 years. He talked about you constantly, about how brilliant you were, how proud he was of you. A man doesn't talk about someone like that if they're being manipulated. I want to help. Call me back. I stared at the phone. One voice. One person who believed me. Then another voicemail came through. Kendra, this is Professor Martinez from Stanford. I was your professor in advanced algorithms. I want you to know that I've reviewed your work personally, and there's no way you cheated. Your code is original, innovative, and yours. I'm fighting this investigation. Don't give up. Then another. Miss Hayes, I'm Julia Santos. I was Thomas's executive assistant for 10 years. I saw how he treated you. I saw the love. The family is lying, and I'm willing to testify to that. One by one, the voicemails came in. People I'd worked with at Horizon Tech, professors who'd taught me. Business associates who'd known Thomas. Even people I'd never met, who just knew that the story didn't add up. They weren't the majority. Most people still believed the family's lies. But these voices, these people who saw the truth, they were enough to remind me why I was fighting. I wasn't fighting for the money. I was fighting because Thomas had believed I deserved it. Because giving up would mean letting them rewrite history. Because somewhere out there, another adopted kid was watching this story. And they needed to see that you could fight back against people who tried to erase you. I called Robert Kimball. I'm ready for Monday, I said. Whatever happens, I'm ready. Good, because I've got news. Trevor Grant is running his story tomorrow morning. The real story, with testimonies from people who knew Thomas, with evidence that contradicts every lie the family has told. Will people believe it? Some will, some won't. But it will create enough doubt that the judge has to take our evidence seriously. That night, I slept in my car in a Target parking lot. It was uncomfortable, cold, and scary. But I'd survived. One more day. Monday morning, I woke up to my phone exploding with notifications. Trevor's article had dropped at 6 a.m. The truth about Thomas Hayes. How a family's greed created a false narrative. The article was everything I'd hoped for. Detailed, researched, fair. It laid out the timeline of Thomas's changes, showed that he'd been of sound mind, included testimony from people who'd worked with him. But more than that, it exposed the family's lies. The edited video, the fabricated evidence, the coordinated media campaign. It included a quote from Diane Foster. Thomas knew exactly what he was doing. He told me repeatedly that Kendra was the only one who loved him for who he was, not what he could give them. The idea that she manipulated him is insulting to his memory. The article was shared thousands of times within hours. The narrative was beginning to shift slowly, but it was shifting. At 10 a.m., I walked into the courthouse for the emergency hearing, wearing the one professional outfit I owned, carrying Thomas's recordings on a USB drive. Garrett and Bethany were already there with Preston Walsh and a team of expensive lawyers. They looked confident, polished, powerful. I looked like exactly what I was. A 26-year-old woman who'd been sleeping in her car, fighting for her life. But when Robert Kimball stood up and began presenting Thomas's evidence, when the judge heard Thomas's voice explaining why he'd left me everything, when the recordings of Garrett and Bethany's racist comments played in that courtroom, I watched their confidence crumble. Your Honor, Robert said, pulling up documents on the screen. Thomas Hayes was not a confused old man being manipulated. He was a brilliant businessman who knew exactly who his children were. And he made a deliberate choice to leave his legacy to the daughter who truly loved him. The judge listened to hours of testimony. Heard from Diane Foster, from Julia Santos, from professors and colleagues. Saw the evidence that Thomas had been sound of mind, that his will was legitimate, that the family's claims were based on lies. By the end of the day, the judge made a preliminary ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I'm lifting the freeze on the estate assets pending full hearing. Miss Hayes will have access to her inheritance while we continue to investigate the family's claims of undue influence. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. I walked out of that courthouse and stood on the steps, breathing in the cold air, feeling the sun on my face for the first time in weeks. My phone rang. Robert Kimball. The bank just confirmed. You have full access to the estate accounts. All $200 million. I looked across the street and saw Garrett and Bethany standing by their car, staring at me with expressions of pure shock and rage. They had tried to break me. They had taken everything I had, destroyed my reputation, isolated me from everyone I loved. But they had failed to take the one thing that mattered: Thomas's belief in me, and his final gift. I was no longer the powerless adopted girl sleeping in her car. I was Kendra Hayes, CEO of Horizon Tech, worth $200 million, and I was just getting started. The darkest descent was over. Now came the reckoning. The first thing I did with access to my inheritance was book a hotel room. Not just any hotel. The Four Seasons in downtown San Francisco. A suite with a view of the bay, a king bed with sheets that felt like clouds, and a bathroom bigger than Jasmine's entire apartment. I stood in that suite, surrounded by luxury I could now afford, and broke down crying. Not from relief. From the overwhelming weight of everything that had happened to get me here. I'd won access to the money, but I'd lost so much else. That night, I ordered room service and took my first hot bath in weeks. I let myself feel clean, safe, warm. I let myself breathe without looking over my shoulder. And then I started planning what came next. Robert Kimball arrived the next morning with a team of financial advisors, lawyers, and accountants. We sat in the hotel's conference room, and they laid out exactly what I now controlled. Horizon Tech is valued at approximately $3 billion, Robert explained. You own 51% of the company, which Thomas structured specifically to give you controlling interest. The remaining shares are held by investors and board members. What about Garrett and Bethany? They each had 5% shares that Thomas gave them years ago. But you control the company. You have the power to make all major decisions. I looked at the organizational charts, the financial reports, the strategic plans. Thomas had built something incredible, and he'd trusted me to protect it. There's something else, Robert said, sliding another document across the table. The estate includes the house, several investment properties, and significant stock holdings in other companies. But there's also this. He showed me a letter Thomas had written to the Horizon Tech board, to be opened only after his death. I am leaving controlling interest in Horizon Tech to my daughter, Kendra Hayes. She has proven herself to be brilliant, innovative, and trustworthy. She understands this company better than anyone else, including my biological children. I am confident she will lead Horizon Tech into the future I always envisioned. The board doesn't know about this letter yet, Robert continued. I wanted you to decide when and how to reveal your ownership. I thought about Garrett, who'd been telling everyone he was taking over the company. About the board's statement distancing themselves from me. About every person at Horizon Tech who'd watched me work there for years and never saw me as anything but the boss's adopted daughter. I want to call a board meeting, I said. This week. I want to introduce myself as the new majority owner and CEO. The advisors exchanged glances. Miss Hayes, one of them said carefully, you're 26 years old with a master's degree, but no official leadership experience. The board may resist accepting you as CEO. Then they can resign. It's my company now. That afternoon, I went shopping. Not because I needed to, but because I needed to feel like myself again. I bought professional clothes that fit perfectly. Got my hair done properly for the first time in months. Bought a new laptop, new phone, everything I'd been making do without. But the most important purchase was a car. I traded in my old sedan for a Tesla Model S. Nothing too flashy, but nice enough to make a statement. I was driving back to the hotel when my phone rang. A number I hadn't seen in weeks. Jasmine. My finger hovered over the answer button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her feel what it was like to be cut off. But another part of me, the part that remembered our friendship before everything fell apart, made me answer. Ken. Her voice was small, uncertain. I saw the news. About the hearing. About the inheritance being unfrozen. Yeah, I'm so sorry. About everything. About not believing you. About making you leave. She was crying now. I saw Trevor's article. I saw the evidence. I should have trusted you. I pulled over into a parking lot, my hands gripping the steering wheel. You hurt me, Jasmine. When I needed you most, you chose to believe Garrett over me. I know. I was wrong. I was so wrong. She took a shaky breath. Can we talk? In person? I want to apologize properly. I want to explain. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same person who'd begged for a place to stay on Jasmine's floor. She was harder now, more careful. I need time, I said finally. I'm not ready yet. I understand. Just know that I'm here when you are ready. And Ken, I'm really proud of you. For fighting back. For not giving up. After we hung up, I sat in that parking lot for a long time, trying to figure out how I felt. Jasmine had abandoned me when I was at my lowest. But she'd also been my best friend for years. She'd been manipulated by people who were experts at manipulation. The question was, could I forgive her? And more importantly, did I want to? That night, I received an unexpected email. From Bethany. Kendra, I think we need to talk. Just the two of us. No lawyers, no family. There are things you need to understand about why we did what we did. Please. For Dad's memory. For Dad's memory. The manipulation was almost beautiful in its transparency. But I was curious. I wanted to hear what excuse she'd come up with. What story she'd tell herself to justify everything they'd done. We met at a coffee shop in Palo Alto, neutral territory. Bethany arrived looking tired, her designer clothes slightly rumpled. She'd aged in the past few weeks. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sitting down across from me. I'm here. Talk. She stirred her coffee, not meeting my eyes. I want you to understand that we didn't do this out of cruelty. We did it because we truly believed Dad wasn't thinking clearly. That's a lie and you know it. Is it? She finally looked up. Kendra, you have to understand what it was like for us. Growing up with a father who was brilliant but distant. Who cared more about his company than his children. And then suddenly, when we were teenagers, he brings home this little girl and gives her all the attention we'd been craving our entire lives. I stayed quiet, letting her talk. We watched him light up around you in ways he never did with us. Watched him spend hours teaching you things he never had time to teach us. Watched him be the father to you that he never was to us. That's not my fault. I know. Intellectually, I know that. She wiped her eyes. But emotionally, it felt like you stole our father. And when he died and we found out he'd left you everything, it felt like confirmation that we were right. That you mattered to him and we didn't. So you tried to destroy me. We tried to get back what we thought should have been ours. She reached across the table, but I pulled my hands away. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm just asking you to understand why we did it. I looked at this woman who'd tormented me for weeks, who'd orchestrated a campaign to destroy my reputation, who'd turned my best friend against me. And I saw something I hadn't expected. Pain. Real, genuine pain. You're right, I said quietly. Thomas wasn't always a good father to you. He was complicated, driven, sometimes selfish. But that doesn't excuse what you did to me. I know. You didn't just fight for the inheritance. You tried to erase me. You used racism, lies, manipulation. You made me homeless. You tried to destroy my education and my career. My voice was steady now, controlled. You didn't just want the money. You wanted me to suffer. Bethany looked down at her coffee. You're right. And I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you just sorry you lost? She didn't answer. I stood up. Here's what's going to happen. I'm taking over Horizon Tech as CEO. You and Garrett still have your shares, so you'll get dividends. But you'll have no decision-making power. No influence. No control. Kendra, I'm not finished. I leaned down, my voice low. You tried to teach me a lesson about knowing my place. Instead, you taught me exactly how ruthless I need to be to survive in a world that wants to see me fail. So thank you for that. I left her sitting there and walked out into the sunshine, feeling something shift inside me. I'd been given a choice. Forgive them and try to rebuild some kind of relationship, or cut them out completely and move forward alone. But maybe there was a third option. Maybe I could be strategic. Keep them close enough to control, but far enough that they couldn't hurt me again. The next day, I received a call from an unexpected source. Margaret, Thomas's sister. Kendra, I owe you an apology. A real one. I'm listening. I saw the recordings. I heard what Thomas really thought about Garrett and Bethany. About me. Her voice cracked. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm ashamed. Because I let my prejudices and my loyalty to family blind me to the truth. She paused. And because I want to make it right. If you'll let me. How? I have documents. Emails between Garrett and Preston Walsh, where they discuss fabricating evidence against you. Text messages where Bethany coordinates the media campaign. I kept copies because something felt wrong, but I didn't act on it. I should have. I'm acting on it now. This was the moment. I could take those documents and destroy Garrett and Bethany completely. I could pursue criminal charges for fraud, for defamation, for conspiracy. I could make sure they lost everything, just like they'd tried to do to me. Or I could take the higher road. Use the documents as insurance, but not as weapons. Prove I was better than them. Send me the documents, I said. But I'm not making any promises about what I'll do with them. That's fair. Kendra, Thomas was right about you. You're going to do amazing things. That night, I sat in my hotel suite with all the evidence spread out before me. Thomas's recordings, Margaret's documents, Trevor's research, a complete picture of everything the family had done. Robert Kimball called. The board meeting is scheduled for Friday. Are you ready? I'm ready. But Robert, I need your advice on something. What's that? How much mercy should I show them? He was quiet for a long moment. That's not a legal question. That's a moral one. Only you can answer it. After we hung up, I thought about Thomas's final words to me. Show them who you are. Who was I? Was I the vengeful daughter who would destroy the people who'd tried to destroy her? Or was I the bigger person who'd take the high road and prove that love and integrity mattered more than revenge? The truth was I was both. And I was neither. I was Kendra Hayes. I was a woman who'd been through hell and survived. I was someone who understood that mercy and strength weren't opposites. That you could be kind without being weak. That you could forgive without forgetting. But I also understood that some people didn't deserve forgiveness. That protecting yourself wasn't the same as being cruel. That choosing not to destroy someone wasn't the same as letting them off the hook. I picked up my phone and texted Jasmine. Coffee tomorrow. Let's talk. Then I texted Diane Foster. Thank you for believing in me. I'd like to take you to dinner to properly thank you. And finally, I opened my laptop and began writing. Not a revenge plan. Not a strategy for destruction. But a vision for what Horizon Tech could become under my leadership. A plan to honor Thomas's legacy not by punishing his children, but by building something so incredible that it would make their betrayal irrelevant. Because that was the real choice I was facing. Not whether to forgive or punish, but whether to let their actions define me or to define myself through my own choices. Thomas had given me power. Now I had to decide what kind of person I wanted to be with that power. And I was choosing to be someone he would be proud of. The reckoning was coming. But it wouldn't be the one Garrett and Bethany expected. It would be something far more powerful. The reckoning of a woman who'd been broken and rebuilt herself stronger. Who'd lost everything and gained the wisdom to use her second chance wisely. Friday morning, I would walk into that boardroom as the new CEO of Horizon Tech. And I would show them all exactly who Kendra Hayes really was. Friday morning arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, clear, the kind of California day that felt like a new beginning. I stood in front of the mirror in my hotel suite, adjusting my tailored navy suit. Professional, powerful, but not trying too hard. My hair was styled in natural curls that I'd spent years learning to love despite the Hayes family's constant comments about my difficult hair. Today, I was walking into Horizon Tech as its owner and CEO. And I was going to do it as myself, unapologetically. Robert Kimball met me in the lobby at 9 a.m., carrying a briefcase full of legal documents. The board doesn't know why they've been called in, he said as we drove to the office. Preston Walsh tried to get information, but I kept everything locked down. They think this is about settling the estate dispute. Good. I want their honest reactions. Kendra, you should know that Garrett has been telling people he's going to be announced as CEO today. He's been networking with board members, making promises, building alliances. I smiled. Then this is going to be even better than I thought. We pulled up to Horizon Tech headquarters. the gleaming glass building in Silicon Valley that Thomas had designed himself. I'd been coming here since I was 12 years old, but I'd always entered through the side doors, always been careful not to take up too much space. Today, I walked through the front entrance with my head high. The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw me. "Miss Hayes, I didn't know you'd be here today. I'm here for the board meeting." Of course, they're gathering in the main conference room. As we walked through the building, people stopped and stared. Whispers followed us. Everyone had seen the news coverage, the articles, the scandal. They all knew who I was. What they didn't know yet was what I'd become. The conference room was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. 12 board members were already seated around the massive table. Garrett was at the head, in Thomas's old seat, looking every inch the CEO he thought he was about to become. His face went white when he saw me walk in. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, looking at Robert. "This is a board meeting. She has no authority to be present." "Actually," Robert said, setting his briefcase on the table, "she has every authority. She's the majority shareholder." The room erupted in confused voices. Board members looking at each other, at Garrett, at me. "That's impossible," Preston Walsh said, standing up. "The estate is still in probate. No shares have been transferred." "The probate process is ongoing," Robert agreed, pulling out documents. "But the preliminary hearing confirmed that Thomas Hayes' final will is valid and legally binding. As of that ruling, Kendra Hayes owns 51% of Horizon Tech." He began distributing copies of the will, of the court ruling, of the share transfer documents Thomas had prepared. I watched the board members' faces as they read. Shock, confusion, and from a few of them, something that looked like respect. "This is outrageous," Garrett said, his voice rising. "Dad wasn't in his right mind. This will is being contested." "The will is being contested," I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was steady, clear. "By you. Because you can't accept that Thomas chose to leave his company to someone he believed could actually run it. You're 26 years old with no business experience. I have a master's in computer science from Stanford. I've worked at this company every summer since I was 15. I've coded programs that are still generating revenue. I've sat in on board meetings, strategic planning sessions, and investor calls. I walked slowly around the table. What I don't have is a gambling addiction, a history of embezzlement, or a pattern of treating this company like my personal piggy bank." Garrett's face turned red. Several board members were now looking at him with new understanding. I nodded to Robert, who pulled up a presentation on the screen. "These are financial records from the past 3 years," I said. "They show multiple instances of Garrett Hayes using company funds for personal expenses. Luxury vacations charged to the company card. Personal investments made with company capital. Even a $2 million loan from Thomas that was supposed to be for business development, but was actually used to pay gambling debts." The numbers appeared on screen, undeniable and damning. "This is a violation of my privacy," Garrett protested. "This is financial fraud," one of the board members said, a woman named Linda who'd been with the company for 20 years. "How long has this been going on?" "According to these records, at least 3 years," I said. Thomas knew about it. He kept detailed documentation. He was planning to remove Garrett from the board before he died. I pulled up the next slide. Thomas's letter to the board, the one Robert had shown me days earlier. The room fell silent as they read Thomas's words. His clear statement that I should lead the company. His concerns about Garrett's financial mismanagement. His absolute confidence in my ability to take Horizon Tech forward. "This letter is dated 6 months before Thomas died," Linda said slowly. "Long before any claims of diminished capacity." "Exactly," Robert confirmed. Thomas Hayes knew exactly what he was doing. He spent years preparing Kendra to take over this company. The family's claims of manipulation are not only false but insulting to Thomas's memory. "I move that we accept Kendra Hayes as our new CEO," Linda said, looking around the table. "All in favor?" "Wait," Preston Walsh jumped in. "The board can't just. The majority shareholder has the right to appoint the CEO," Linda interrupted. "That's in our bylaws. And if she's appointing herself, we can either accept it or resign. Those are our options." Slowly, Hands began to rise around the table. Not all of them. Some of the older board members, people who'd been loyal to the family, kept their hands down. But more than half the board voted in favor. I was officially the CEO of Horizon Tech. Garrett stood up so fast his chair fell over. This is insane. You can't run this company. You're nobody. You're nothing but a foster kid who got lucky. The room went silent. Several board members looked uncomfortable, but I remained calm. You're right, I said quietly. I was a foster kid, a black girl who grew up in the system before Thomas chose to give me a family. But I'm not nothing, Garrett. I'm the daughter of a man who built this company from the ground up. I'm a Stanford graduate with a master's in computer science. I'm someone who understands this company's code, its culture, and its mission. And most importantly, I'm someone your father trusted with his legacy. I walked toward the door, then turned back. You're removed from the board effective immediately. Your shares remain yours, so you'll continue to receive dividends. But you have no decision-making power, no office, no company card, and no access to proprietary information. Security will escort you out. You can't do this, Garrett said, but his voice had lost its conviction. I just did. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Garrett looked around the room, searching for allies, but everyone avoided his eyes. As he was escorted out, Bethany appeared in the doorway. She looked smaller somehow, less polished than usual. Kendra, please. Can we talk privately? I looked at her for a long moment. No, but I'll give you the same deal I'm giving Garrett. Your shares remain yours, but you have no role in this company. If you want to contest that, we can discuss it in court, along with the fraud charges, the defamation campaign, and the fabricated evidence. Her face crumbled. I just wanted you to understand. I understand perfectly. You wanted what you thought you deserved, and you didn't care who you destroyed to get it. Now you're getting exactly what you actually deserve. Nothing. After she left, I turned back to the board. I know some of you are uncomfortable with this transition. If you'd like to resign, I'll accept your resignation with no hard feelings. But if you stay, I need your complete commitment to moving this company forward. 3 board members stood up and left. The remaining 9 stayed seated. Good, I said. Then let's talk about the future of Horizon Tech. For the next 3 hours, I laid out my vision. Expansion into new markets. Investment in emerging technologies. A complete overhaul of the company culture to prioritize innovation and inclusion. Programs to recruit talent from underrepresented communities. Partnership with universities to create pathways for first-generation college students. Everything Thomas had wanted but had been too cautious to implement. By the time the meeting ended, I could see the shift in how the board looked at me. Not as Thomas's adopted daughter or the girl who'd caused a scandal, but as their CEO. As I was packing up my materials, Linda approached me. That was impressive, she said. Thomas would have been proud. Thank you. I have to ask, though, what you did to Garrett and Bethany, cutting them out completely. Was that about justice or revenge? I thought about that question, about everything they'd put me through, about the choice I'd made to be merciful instead of vindictive. It was about consequences, I said finally. They tried to destroy me because they thought I was powerless. I'm showing them what happens when you underestimate someone. But I'm not taking their money. I'm not pressing criminal charges. I'm not trying to ruin their lives. I'm just making sure they can't hurt anyone else. Linda nodded. That's good leadership. Firm but fair. After she left, I stood alone in the conference room, looking out at the Silicon Valley skyline. This company was mine now. This responsibility was mine. This future was mine to shape. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor Grant. Heard about the board meeting. Congratulations, CEO Hayes. I'd love to do a follow-up interview about your vision for Horizon Tech. Then another text from Diane Foster. I knew you could do it. Thomas is smiling down on you today. And finally, one from Jasmine. I saw the press release. Your CEO. You really did it. I'm so proud of you, Ken. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. I looked at that last message for a long time. Jasmine had hurt me, but she'd also been there for me before everything fell apart. The question was whether I could trust her again. But that was a question for another day. Today was about victory, about justice, about showing the world that the girl they'd tried to erase was now the woman they'd have to reckon with. I took one last look at the conference room where I'd just claimed my inheritance, then walked toward the elevator. The security guard at the front desk stood up when he saw me. "Miss Hayes, I just wanted to say congratulations. Mr. Hayes used to talk about you all the time. Said you were going to do great things. Looks like he was right." "Thank you," I said, my throat tightening. "That means more than you know." As I walked out of the building into the sunshine, I pulled out my phone and opened the photo album. The pictures of Thomas and me over the years. Learning to code, graduating from high school, celebrating my acceptance to Stanford. All the moments when he'd been more than my adoptive father, when he'd been my dad. "I did it," I whispered to his memory. "I showed them who I am, just like you asked." My phone rang. "Robert Kimball." "Kendra, I just heard from Preston Walsh. The family wants to meet. They're ready to settle all remaining legal disputes." "What are they offering?" "Complete withdrawal of all contestation. Acknowledgement that Thomas's will is valid. Public apology for the defamation campaign. In exchange, they want you to not pursue criminal charges for fraud." I thought about Garrett's gambling debts, Bethany's affairs, the evidence Margaret had given me that could send them both to prison. "Tell them I accept, on one condition." "What's that?" "They make a public statement acknowledging that Thomas was of sound mind and that I earned this inheritance. I want them to tell the truth. Just once. I'll make it happen." As I drove back to my hotel, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't the scared girl sleeping in her car anymore. I wasn't the adopted daughter begging for acceptance. I wasn't even the victim seeking vindication. I was Kendra Hayes, CEO of a $3 billion company, with the power to shape technology's future and the wisdom to use that power responsibly. Thomas had given me everything, but I'd earned it by surviving everything they'd thrown at me. The revelation was complete. The truth was out. And now came the part I'd been waiting for. Building something beautiful from the ashes of their betrayal. The best revenge wasn't destroying them. It was becoming so successful that their betrayal became irrelevant. And that success was just beginning. 3 months later, I stood in front of a full-length mirror in my new home, adjusting the collar of my blouse before heading to the office. Not the Four Seasons. Not Jasmine's air mattress. My home. A beautiful loft in San Francisco with exposed brick walls, huge windows overlooking the bay, and enough space to finally breathe. The house where I'd grown up, the Hayes estate, I'd sold it. Not out of spite, but because it was never really mine. It was Thomas's house, filled with Thomas's memories. I needed to build something that belonged to me. My phone buzzed with my morning calendar alert. 9 a.m. meeting with the Horizon Tech Innovation Team. 11 a.m. interview with Fortune magazine about being one of the youngest female CEOs in tech. 2 p.m. lunch with Diane Foster to discuss the scholarship fund we were establishing in Thomas's name. The scholarship fund. That had been my first major decision as CEO. The Thomas Hayes Foundation for Foster Youth in STEM, providing full scholarships, mentorship, and career support for kids who looked like me. Kids who needed someone to believe in them the way Thomas had believed in me. We'd already awarded scholarships to 15 students in the first round. I'd met each one of them personally, seen myself in their eyes, in their hunger for opportunity, in their determination to prove they belonged. My doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jasmine standing there with 2 coffees and a nervous smile. "Good morning, boss," she said. "I brought peace offerings." Over the past 3 months, Jasmine and I had slowly rebuilt our friendship. It wasn't the same as before, probably never would be. But we'd had long conversations about trust, about loyalty, about how money changes everything even when you don't want it to. She'd apologized repeatedly. I'd forgiven her mostly. We were learning to navigate this new dynamic where I was a CEO and she was still a graduate student, where I could buy anything I wanted and she was still counting pennies. It was complicated, but it was real. "You know you don't have to bring me coffee every time you come over," I said, accepting the cup. "I know, but I want to. It's my way of saying I'm still here, still showing up." We sat on my balcony, looking out at the city, and for a few minutes we were just 2 friends having coffee. No money, no complications, just us. "Have you talked to Garrett or Bethany?" Jasmine asked. "Not directly. They issued the public statement like we agreed. Acknowledged that Thomas was of sound mind, that the will was legitimate, that I earned the inheritance." How did that feel? Honestly, empty. I thought vindication would feel better. But hearing them admit they were wrong didn't change what they did. Didn't give me back the weeks I spent homeless. Didn't undo the damage to my reputation. But people know the truth now. Some people. Others still believe I'm a gold digger who manipulated a dying man. That's the thing about public opinion. Once a narrative takes hold, it's hard to change it. Jasmine was quiet for a moment. "So what are you going to do about it?" "Keep building. Keep succeeding. Keep proving them wrong every single day." After Jasmine left, I drove to Horizon Tech. The security guard waved at me as I pulled into my reserved parking spot. The reserved parking spot with my name on it. That still felt surreal. Inside, employees greeted me by name, some with genuine warmth, others with the careful politeness people show when they're not sure how to act around power. A few still looked at me with skepticism, wondering if the foster kid could really run a tech company. I didn't blame them. I wondered the same thing sometimes. But then I'd sit in strategy meetings and realize I understood the technology better than most of the people in the room. I'd review financial reports and see exactly where we could optimize. I'd talk to employees and hear their ideas, their concerns, their visions for what Horizon Tech could become. Thomas had prepared me for this. Every conversation we'd had, every lesson he'd taught me, every moment he'd included me in his business decisions. It had all been leading to this. I just wished he was here to see it. The Fortune magazine interview was scheduled for 11 a.m. in my office. The journalist was a woman in her 40s named Patricia Williams who'd been covering tech for 20 years. "So, Miss Hayes," she began, "you've had quite a journey to this CO position. How would you describe these past few months?" I thought about sleeping in my car, about Stanford threatening to expel me, about watching my reputation get destroyed in real time. "Transformative," I said finally. "I learned who I am when everything is stripped away. I learned what I'm capable of when I have to fight for my life. And I learned that the people who underestimate you give you the greatest gift, the element of surprise. Your adoptive siblings contested the will quite aggressively. How would you characterize your relationship with them now?" "Professional. They're shareholders, so we communicate through lawyers about company business. But we're not family. Not anymore. Do you think you'll ever reconcile?" I paused, considering. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe that people can change, that they can recognize their mistakes and grow from them. But another part of me knows that some betrayals are too deep to come back from. They didn't just fight me for money. They tried to erase me. That's not something I can easily forgive. What would you say to other adopted children or foster youth who might be watching your story? This was the question I'd been waiting for. The one that mattered most. I'd say that your worth isn't determined by the family you were born into or the circumstances you came from. It's determined by who you choose to become. I'd say that when people try to make you feel small, that's their limitation, not yours. And I'd say that the best revenge against people who don't believe in you is becoming exactly who you were meant to be. After the interview, I had lunch with Diane Foster at her favorite restaurant. She'd become a mentor to me over these months, teaching me how to navigate the social circles of wealthy San Francisco, how to build alliances, how to use my platform for good. "You're doing beautifully," she said, raising her wine glass. "Thomas would be so proud." "I hope so. Some days I feel like I'm flying blind. That's called leadership, dear. No one knows what they're doing. The successful ones just get comfortable with uncertainty." "Diane, can I ask you something? Did Thomas ever talk about what he wanted to happen after he died?" She smiled sadly. "All the time. He knew Garrett and Bethany would fight you for the inheritance. He knew it would be ugly. But he also knew you were strong enough to survive it. He had more faith in me than I had in myself. That's what parents do. They see who we can become before we see it ourselves." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "But you proved him right. You survived everything they threw at you, and you came out stronger." That evening, I did something I'd been avoiding for months. I went to visit Margaret. She'd reached out several times since giving me the evidence against Garrett and Bethany. She'd apologized. She'd offered to help. But I hadn't been ready to face her until now. She lived in a beautiful home in Marin County, all windows and light. She answered the door looking older than I remembered, more fragile. Kendra, thank you for coming. We sat in her living room, tea between us, an awkward silence filling the space. I don't know how to apologize for what I did, she said finally. For siding with them. For believing their lies about you. For not seeing what Thomas saw. Why didn't you see it? She looked down at her tea. Because it was easier to believe that Thomas was confused than to admit that Garrett and Bethany were the children he'd always been disappointed in. Because accepting that you were his real heir meant accepting that biology doesn't matter as much as love. And that's a hard truth when you've spent your whole life believing blood is everything. Do you believe it now? I believe that Thomas made the right choice. I believe that you earned everything he gave you. And I believe that I let my prejudices blind me to the truth. She met my eyes. I can't undo what I did. But I can tell you that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I looked at this woman who'd stood by while her nephew and niece tried to destroy me. Who'd added her voice to their lies. Who'd made me feel like I didn't belong. I appreciate your apology, I said carefully. But I'm not ready to forgive you yet. Maybe someday. But not today. I understand. The offer stands, though. If you ever need anything, family history, stories about Thomas, support navigating his old social circles. I'm here. As I drove home that evening, I realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't something I owed anyone. It wasn't a requirement for moving forward. I could acknowledge their apologies without absolving them. I could be civil without being close. I could define my own terms for every relationship in my life. That night, I opened my laptop and did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I started writing. Not a business plan or a strategy document, but my story. Everything that had happened, from Thomas's death to this moment. The betrayal, the homelessness, the fight, the victory. All of it. Not because I wanted revenge or sympathy, but because somewhere out there, another foster kid was feeling like they didn't belong. Another adopted child was being made to feel like charity. Another person was being told they weren't good enough because of where they came from or what they looked like. And I wanted them to know that they could fight back, that they could win, that their story didn't have to end with defeat. 2 weeks later, I published that story on Medium. When my adoptive dad died, I kept the $200 million inheritance secret just to see who would treat me right. It went viral within hours. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. People sharing their own stories of adoption, of foster care, of family betrayal, of fighting against odds that seemed impossible. But my favorite comment came from a 16-year-old girl in Texas. I'm in foster care right now, and everyone treats me like I'm damaged goods. Your story showed me that I'm not broken. I'm just waiting for my chance to prove what I can do. Thank you. That comment made everything worth it. Every painful moment, every betrayal, every night sleeping in my car. Because it wasn't just my story anymore. It was a story for everyone who'd ever been underestimated. 6 months after becoming CEO, Horizon Tech announced record profits and launched 3 new products that revolutionized our industry. We expanded our diversity hiring initiatives, invested in community programs, and became the first major tech company to require unconscious bias training for all employees. The tech press called me a disruptor. The business press called me a prodigy. The general press called me the foster kid who beat the odds. I called myself Kendra Hayes, daughter of Thomas Hayes, CEO of Horizon Tech woman who refused to be defined by other people's limitations. 1 year after Thomas died, I stood at his grave with flowers and news. I did it, Dad. Horizon Tech is thriving. The scholarship fund has helped 50 students so far. And I'm happy. Really, truly happy. The wind rustled through the trees, and I imagined it was him, telling me he was proud. I know you wanted me to see who people really were, I continued. And I did. I saw cruelty, greed, prejudice. But I also saw kindness. People like Diane who believed in me. Like Robert who fought for me. Like Trevor who told the truth. Like that security guard who remembered your words about me. I touched his headstone gently. You taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about love that doesn't come with conditions. As I walked back to my car, my phone rang. An unknown number. Miss Hayes, this is Amanda from Oakland Family Services. We met briefly when you established the scholarship fund. I'm calling because we have a situation with one of our foster teens. She's brilliant, incredibly talented in computer science, but she's aging out of the system next month with nowhere to go. I was wondering if you might have any opportunities at Horizon Tech. I thought about being 9 years old, terrified, alone, wondering if anyone would ever choose me. Send me her information. And Amanda, tell her that family isn't about where you start. It's about who sees your potential and decides to invest in it. Because that was the real legacy Thomas had left me. Not the money, not the company, but the understanding that one person believing in you can change everything. And now I had the power to be that person for someone else. I drove back to my office, back to my life, back to the future I was building from the ruins of everything they'd tried to take from me. Garrett and Bethany got their dividends. They got their money, but they lost everything that mattered. Respect, reputation, the legacy their father had built. I got something better than revenge. I got the chance to prove that Thomas was right about me. I got the opportunity to build something that would outlast all of us. I got to be the person he believed I could be. And that was the greatest inheritance of all. So to everyone watching, everyone listening, everyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong or didn't deserve good things, or didn't measure up to someone else's expectations, I want you to know this. Your story isn't over. Your worth isn't determined by the people who reject you. Your future isn't limited by your past. Sometimes the family that throws you away isn't worth keeping. Sometimes the best revenge is becoming so successful that their betrayal becomes a footnote in your story. Sometimes the girl everyone underestimates becomes the woman everyone has to reckon with. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my inheritance. And if you enjoyed hearing it, if it spoke to you, if it gave you hope or strength, or just reminded you that you're not alone, then please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me your own story of overcoming odds. Because we're stronger together. We're more powerful when we refuse to be silent. We're unstoppable when we remember our worth. Tomorrow, I'll be sharing another story about a woman who discovered her husband's secret life and used that discovery to build an empire of her own. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, remember this. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be respected. You deserve to fight for what's rightfully yours. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.